Andrea, welcome to the campfire sessions.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much.
It's amazing to have you here. Actually, I want to go ahead and jump right in. Talk to me a little bit about how spirituality can help us when we're trying to find that strength to overcome adversity.
I think we're all intrinsically spiritual. We're spirits having a human experience, right? We've heard this probably from many other gurus and motivational quotes. um, I believe that when we are in that difficult situation, when we are in that dark corner, that dark night of the soul, this is when our ego shuts up. And this is when spirit talks. This is when we find ourselves in a situation that we don't see any way to overcome it. Suddenly we have the strength to get up and take the first step. And as we take the first step, life opens up to us and people show up, opportunities show up, circumstances change. And I think that is a clear sign of life and spirit talking to us through us in that time of darkness, in the time of need, in the time of sorrow and suffering, or even when we are confused. There is a moment that we don't find the answers in our mind. We never do. We think we do, but we never do. And once that conscious part is in silence, this is when spirit plays its magic. This is when you can see through the eyes of spirit, the spirit that you are. And suddenly the people and the opportunities you had in front of you that you couldn't see before because you were living trapped inside of your mind, suddenly now you can see them. So I think everything we do relates to spirit. We are just too trapped in our minds and in our egos and what we consider logical and the structures that we have picked up from our reality, our family, and our world, our country, or culture to make a personality about us and around us.
It's that personality that I can really recall a number of different times that it's shifted. It's taken on a different aura or perception in order to really fit in with what's going on within the environment around me. And I think a lot about the time that I spend out on the trails, the different things that I see, because I'm very introverted and I like to really overcomplicate things in my head and really think through them. So I miss a lot of the easy details sometimes to get unstuck and go forward. And that's where getting out on the trail and, interacting with seeing an animal come by or just watching the stream along a local river or whatever becomes so phenomenal. I feel like a lot of the time when you're caught up in that endless ruminating of thoughts or you're stuck in your ego and I'm going to push through and I'm going to do this regardless of whether the old ways work or not. I think that the visual aspect of something being put in front of us becomes so important because it's a reminder that you don't have to have all those answers. You can take the freedom to explore and discover new ways to do different things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And nature is really healing. Nature is really the best therapist. Nature is the best coach. Nature is the best advisor because just by observing nature, um, it's almost as medicine. Like it reconfigures your brain, it reconfigures your mind, your thought processes, and it's now being also scientifically proven that we interact at a photon level with the trees and with the plants, and it's it's just magical the fact that we this apex of evolution human actually can heal by interacting with nature, by walking together close to trees or hugging trees, you know, like hugging trees is not crazy anymore because science says you actually exchange photons with it, you exchange energy with it. It heals you, it heals your body, helps you detox, makes you happier. And especially now, with so much technology and so much information and so much noise, nature is our authentic, our part of our authentic self, I think. And although our technology has evolved so fast, our bodies are ancient. So nature is one, probably the best, wisest way to calibrate ourselves.
It's actually, you made a couple of points in there that I think about through my journey, the perception and way that I've really come to understand things. Because, being the apex, actually, I remember as a kid going through hunter safety, and there's a section where they talk about stewardship. And the instructor started it out with, based on our infinite wisdom of the world around us, it's our job to, take care of managing the level of animals that are out there in comparison to the environment. And I always kind of chuckled at that. And then I thought more about it. And our place in the world is because we are so much more evolved. Our place is that steward, but we're also the storytellers for everything on this earth. And because of that, there's kind of the downfall of that is we get caught up in the stories that go through our mind, which get exaggerated through the technology that's at our hands and the overload. And then we come up with all these labels. We put a label on everything that we have because it makes us feel comfortable, right? And the more that we do that, the more we literally lose sight of ourselves. We lose sight of everything around us because we disconnect. We stay stuck in that. And that becomes our voice and that becomes everything to us. But then we always come up to like this cliff where we realize that trail, if we take another step, we're going to fall off and we have to go another direction. That's where I feel like being able to let your ego go is so important because then you start to catch on to all the different messages and language of the trees, the birds, the wind, all these things that change the palette of colors that you're painting that picture or that story with.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that because of the way the system is designed, we put our worth and our value outside of ourselves, in possessions, in status, in the way we look, in, you know, all these things that have been sold to us like they will give us happiness. And when you have this interaction with observing nature, observing an animal, observing things that under the standard of Instagram or TikTok would not be aesthetically pleasing or perfect because it doesn't have all the filters and the rosy things to it. Um, it feels really great. It feels, what happens inside of you is that it again recalibrates you. It puts you in your place. It shuts down the ego. It brings you back to your center. You come back into your internal axis. And it's so powerful because then everything is perfect. The aspect of the perception of perfection that we have today, it's so fabricated. Um, for me, going into nature and observe the animals, for example, observe animals giving birth. This is one of the non-aesthetically pleasing things to look at, but it could change your life because you are witnessing a miracle right in front of you. And when you see the mothers taking care of their babies, their puppies, their calves, the wisdom that is in there that kicks in is just beyond. And it makes you wonder, do I have that in myself too? And so I think communion with everything that is nature, observing everything that is nature, helps us to connect with that inner wisdom that is kind of neglected today.
Now you're picking details off of the trail that I've traveled.
Huh.
You know, I remember there being many stages in my life where it was all about the worth or value that somebody gave me. And that was because the feelings that I carried about myself were too hard to process. So I would mask them with whatever somebody told me I was worth, whatever my value was. And then just like, when an animal gives birth, it represents a new beginning. I had that cataclysm kind of moment where the trail came to the cliff and I had to go a different direction. And it unlocked things that, number one, I never really thought were possible. I never really ever considered that those things would be a part of my journey, but they have changed the entire spectrum of it. And a lot of that learning has come from the interaction with animals that, I'd either see through a hiking experience or out on a hunting trip. And I can give you a great example because we all suffer from anxiety. We all let ourselves get caught up in that thought process. And there's two great examples of that I had where number one, there was a hunting trip that I was out and it was a bitterly cold day. It was miserable. New area. I had never seen this deer that come in finally after sitting all morning. And I hold myself to, I'm not gonna, shoot on something that I've never seen before. I want to have a story. I want to have a connection with that animal. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I call myself a hunter. Why am I not shooting? I can get this done and over with, right? He's tempting me and teasing me. But then I thought about my relationship with anxiety and it being the height of the rut. He's out trying to do his job of reproducing. He's letting himself go out into these dangerous experiences and moments, knowing that he can trust himself. And when I thought about that and my relationship with anxiety, it feels like a life and death situation, but it's not. And if he can do it in a real life and death situation, why can't I? And, going through that thought process, it kind of brought out that rebirth and thinking about how a doe actually raises a fawn. There's many moments and hours where that fawn is left to lay in tall grass so that they can train themselves, they can work themselves through it. There's no story there, there's no judgment, there's no label, just, hey, if I'm stimulated by danger, I'm going to learn how to get out of there. And that's something that if you step outside of the story of anxiety, you realize you can retrain yourself to do the same thing.
Yes, it's a great template to use in everything that presents to you, every emotion that presents in your consciousness, in your picture, in your reality. The fact that you observe something as you observe the animal the first time and say, I don't have a relationship to you. You could say, why is this emotion here? Why is this thought here? I don't have a relationship with it. Why are you showing up in my reality? And then observe it and give yourself the time to understand it. So, where is this coming from? And see how it reacts to danger or fear or a situation that feels unstable or unstabilizing. And I think it's a great template to use because it's self knowledge more so than judging over what you have in front of you. You're giving yourself the time and the space to become the observer. And when we observe, we really open the windows of perceptions of our brains. And this is when this inner wisdom kicks in. And this is when spirit can talk. And this is when answers can come to us. And then when the answers come to us, we can use the same template. So why is this answer here? Is this something that was created from my ego to make me feel good? Or is this something that is really life changing and helping me? And maybe I'm touching a side of myself that hurts, that it's a wound that isn't healed yet. Okay, I don't think ego would like that. Maybe we will observe that part then and see what can we do. So again, there is a wisdom that we share with our planet that unfortunately many people are disconnected of it. And everything they see goes through the lenses of the ego. And they don't understand what observing is because they're used to look at things so quickly in such a fleeting way. This capacity of observing and learning from the nuances of yourself, of your behavior, of your thoughts, of your feelings. Um, Again, circling back, is nature is the best teacher. Nature is the best influence to tune ourselves. I have the luck to live in a very beautiful area that I can be in nature in no time. And it never ceases to amaze me how it changes my perspective. It changes my day. It's like people say, sleep on it when you have a problem. But for me, going out there to the trails and taking a walk, that's it. I don't even think about the so-called problem. But once I come back, it's like I already have an answer to it. And sometimes the answer is not even to the problem itself, but how I personally will deal with that situation at my emotional level, my mental level, even my physical level. Because every time we have a situation that jolts our nervous system, we need to we need to go through it. We need to go through our feelings, but we are wired only to feel them for 90 seconds. And then after that, we should come down. So going in nature, it really gives me that kind of pill to recalibrate my nervous system. And many things are secondary. The things we think are really important turn secondary because if you think in our society, the scale of values is also upside down.
That, that is very true. And that's one of those things that when I reflect on it, I think about as a whole, it's got a lot to do with not only ego, but it's got a lot to do with fear
Yeah.
and, an unwillingness to really tap in and explore that fear without judgment. But if you think about the reason that our species got to the point where we're here today is based off of fear. They
Yes.
had that instinct to know, number one, if I hear something, something might be coming after me, so I gotta go. Number two, I shouldn't do that because it looks kind of scary, and they limit themselves. And in today's world, we have a lot more safety buffers than our ancestors did. So when that fear speaks to us now, it's almost a completely different context. Our society, it's evolved a lot quicker than our feelings or our ability to process our emotions. And that's where that ego also steps in to protect us. One of the things that I really love about hiking with somebody is seeing that literally wash off of their perspective and the way of thinking. You get to that first kind of dicey mountain climb, right? And a lot of people are very hesitant because number one, I got this 35-pound backpack on my back. That's a lot to overcome. Number two, I don't know if I could do it. And when you talk them in through it and you work with it very slowly, they climb their way up in that first smile of satisfaction, that first smile of realizing that I just took something physical and put it within the definition of perseverance and overcoming adversity. and I did it. And they start to build up one run of a ladder after another, and they get that confidence. It is amazing to see how fast they can run with that.
Yes, you just reminded me of the first time I went on a proper mountain climbing slash hiking. And I remember like we all had these very heavy backpacks. I was the only woman in this group of guys that have done these hills forever. And I was like, okay, I'll just have to go ahead and do this. And then the more you walk up and up and up, like all these fears, all this regret, all this anger, all what you could call negative feelings started to come out. And I was in my mind just cursing. When did I think of this? Oh my God, what am I doing this? I was the last one on the trail because everybody, knew how to do it. And I was all, my ego was very hurt. My pride was very hurt. But then one of the guys says something to me. When we arrive at the first summit, you're going to see it was all worth it. And you will forget completely about all the things that you are feeling right now. You won't even feel pain in your body, nothing. And I was like, yeah, okay, bye. Just let me do this. But by the time we got to the first summit, that's exactly what happened. It's like all these voices in my head just shut up. All these hormones of cortisol, whatever it was that I was spewing through my system that were railing me up, they disappeared. They shut down. At that moment, all I could feel was an immense sense of achievement. I was extremely proud of myself. I I felt immense expansion and happiness because when I was down there before coming up to this first summit, I truly did not think I could do it. And I was just doing it to show the guys that I could do it too. But once I was there, I thought, wow, I have the capability to do this. And although my mind is telling me all the time, no, you can't, my body and this one person that gave me those words took me to that space. And then from that summit onto the next one, I was with a smile on my face and I felt so much lighter. It was like magic. Is I discharged all these constructions, just fell off of myself, fell off of my ego. And it was a great lesson for me because you can't take that and convert it into another experience into your everyday life. Sometimes we're cursing our way through a challenge because we don't know what's ahead or it looks difficult. But once we have reached that summit, we realize it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that hard. And I actually got a lot more wisdom from that experience than I would have thought. And then it energizes you and it helps you to move on to the next thing.
That's actually a beautiful story. And, very early on in this, I was working with this individual that they were struggling in life and they thought the idea of adventure and getting into the outdoors was cool, but they had no reference point and they were actually pretty scared. So we started out and we went through something that we're all familiar with, which is just facing the process, right? Starting out very small, putting the puzzle pieces together. And what we did was we'd walk around the local park. They'd have the swing sets, the jungle gym for the kids, and there'd be the little trail that would go in the circle. And we would do that a couple of times. And then we started to venture off more and more into all these different places. They were, just as tame and just as routine. But sitting down one day, this is probably about the fifth or sixth time we got together, and just watching this woodpecker off in the distance, it made this individual realize how limiting that belief of fear really truly was, because it turned out the woodpecker was actually one of their favorite animals. So this is the first time that they had seen one in the wild. And that smile and that perception of letting go of something that was limiting them because they got the call of challenge, that call of a new process from grandfather, son, and from Mother Nature, and they went with it. They reached out, they found somebody that could help them along, that was going to be patient and do all these different things with them. And the last time that we hiked, and this has been about 4 years now, our last hike was a 3-day overnight experience. So, you do get there, and we all have different reference points from our past experiences to help us power through and get to achieve these different things that the fear perception kind of makes us feel like we'll never be able to do. Truth is, you're already working your way up to be able to do those things. It's just a matter of doing it.
Exactly. It's that first step is that uh, it's a decision, really. It's a decision, and then take action on it. And this is, again, this is when ego has to shut up because you're now putting yourself into action. And this is when other mechanisms take place. And this is when all these constructions that we have around ourselves, our beliefs, or even how we are perceived. Because when you are on the trail, you're not that pretty thing that you can put a filter on and you are on the social media, the acceptable standards or whatever. You you have to sweat, you have to get dirty. Um, might not look 100% social media appropriate, but I bet you've never been happier. I bet you've never felt healthier. I bet you've never felt your lungs filled with that much air, and you've never felt your mind so quiet. And this is the miracle, right? When we are in a situation, we have always the possibility to make a decision, and the decision to make that first step, this is when the miracles happen. This is when you reach the summit. When you thought that you couldn't make it anymore, you're there. This is when you see that woodpecker and your perception changes. Uh, I remember the first time I saw a bald eagle. I could not believe it. I almost died. I was in Alaska, and um, it's very beautiful. The nature there reminds me a little bit of Patagonia in a way. But I said to the universe, I want to see a bald eagle. I don't want to leave this place without seeing a bald eagle. And I was always surrounded with people, um, doing walks and things. And this one day I was just alone. And I realized it was time to leave because it was getting dark. And something told me to look up. And when I look up, there it was, the bald eagle all by itself. And I thought, wow, I mean, you could have given me money, you could have given me gold, you could have given me chocolate. That made me so happy that I wouldn't have cared for any of those things. That moment, that was something that it did something to me, to my consciousness, to my energy, and it really invigorated me. And this is when we see who we really are, right? Where our happiness lays is in these things that are so natural and simple and beautiful, because there is no more perfection than the perfection you find in nature. There's no more beauty. That's, to me, it's everything. It's really healing.
Think you bring up a great point because, yeah, within, nature is very beautiful. It's very majestic, captivating, it's relaxing, and it's completely different than the concrete world that we all operate within every day. And when you step out into nature, it really gives you room to examine your heart and discover your values because there's nothing there to place judgment on the value system that you're discovering. It also gives you the freedom to truly practice how to express that. And then you get to bring that back in to your daily life within the concrete world, and you get to express confidently that person that you truly are inside. Even if without the experience right in this moment, you might be afraid. You might know who you are, but you're afraid because you feel like it doesn't fit within the texture of the environment that you interact in. So when you get out into the wilderness and you spend time out there practicing and developing that, when you come back, you realize that environment is yours because you're
Mm.
able to utilize the resources that are in it. And you set down that ego, you set down that judgment, and you get to just live.
Exactly. This is like living the life like the turtle that walks on the floor and bumps against the foot of the chair, the toys of the kids and the plant pots. Afterwards, after you go through the experience, after you go through that walk, through that hill, through that mountain, and you go back to this concrete world, it's like suddenly you have this eagle eye vision. It's like you have elevated yourself or stepped out of that very limited consciousness that living in a world full of tall buildings that you cannot even see perfectly the sky does. It does something to our consciousness. It does, living in a city for a long time, it does something to your consciousness. And even if you live in an area where or a valley, you need to go up to the mountain every once in a while to recycle, reset yourself. I used to work on expedition boats, and when I got to work on the expedition boats, I was coming from a very complicated experience in my life, and the boat that I got to was going to Antarctica, and I thought my problems were so big until I got there. Because when you're there, I say nobody cares. The nature shows you everything is perfect as is. You're the only one here bringing that noise. So, what are you going to do about it? I always say that if I would have continued to work with that problem that was keeping my mental health on the floor, if I would have gone to any other place or stayed in the city instead of having the luck to end up in expedition boat in such a place, I would have been very, very mentally drained and probably physically ill. But because I was in that space, it just did not give me the opportunity to continue to ruminate in what had happened to me. It kicked me into a space of now you have to take care. Now you have to move on. Now you have to take care of yourself, heal yourself. And I'm just looking outside. I'm just looking at nature. I'm just looking at the crazy penguins doing their things, the killer whales doing their things, the whatever doing their things. There is such an impact because nature is so much bigger than you and so majestic that it gives you that perspective. We are constantly living in this perception of what we have right in front of us, like the turtle. And nature has this superpower to just by you being there and interacting with it, it gives you that immense perception. It's like it opens something up of ourselves, of who we are. And I don't think I would have survived if I didn't spend such an intensive time in such a completely different place. So I am definitely grateful that we are in such a beautiful planet. Um, every day I'm grateful for it because I see so much beauty in it. And I think that what you do, for example, sharing about this experience to people is also hopefully enlightening to them and inviting them to spend more time in nature. And they don't need to do much, you know, observing it. It's already enough. It did a miracle for me. to put me in the right direction to heal and become who I am and do what I do right now. So,
It's that observation. That power of observation is really the groundwork for the healing that is possible when you get out into nature. When you do that, you start to pick up on the songs. You start to pick up on, you know, the perception and the place that you fit within the world. You realize that each of us have a purpose, and it helps you to really define yours. And as we come to the end of our conversation, you got to take some time to do the shameless plugging, let people know how to get in touch with you and work with you, what you got going on, all that good stuff.
well, I would say to people go to magicalaudios.com and we, me and two other ladies, we have created this app, which now is a web app of self hypnosis audios and programs. But there's also a library of about 80 other recordings that go from Ho'oponopono, affirmation, subliminal music, theta waves music, etc. And the mission is to help people heal from their subconscious on. So really go into the motherboard of our brain and change those faulty programs that today no longer serve us by doing something so simple like putting your headset before you go to sleep and listen to a 20-minute audio. And it doesn't matter if you fall asleep because subconscious is always listening. So I would just invite everyone to go there. They will find me there too. There is also my personal website is called Andrea Hypno, like short for hypnosis, andreahypno.com. And that's pretty much it. And that's my shame. Shame stuff.
Well, Andrea, thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun. I'm glad I got the opportunity to sit down with you. Looking forward to doing it again sometime.
Yes, thank you very much for your time. And it was super nice sharing stories today.